Welcome to our channel. Today we are diving into the top 10 Blazor WebAssembly features that every developer should know. Blazor WebAssembly is revolutionizing web development by allowing us to build interactive web applications using C# instead of JavaScript. Whether you are a seasoned developer or just starting, these features will enhance your productivity and the performance of your applications. So let's get started now. First, let's create a Blazor WebAssembly project. Create. The Blazor WebAssembly project has been created successfully. First up, we have component-based architecture. Components are the building blocks of Blazor applications, enabling us to create modular and maintainable code. This means you can build complex UIs by composing simple, reusable components. Let's create a simple component first, then we will explain the component line by line. Let's name it simple component. Now we have created our simple component. Write a message here. This is a very simple component. This component composed of two parts. The first part is HTML part and the second part is will be C# code portion. First, let's declare a parameter, namely a public parameter, public string message parameter. Actually, this is a parameter inside the C# code portion. But when we're using this component, this message parameter will be shown as a property of the component. We will see soon. Then, another thing is this message is public, therefore meaning this message is come from the outside of the component. First, we get the message, then we may display it inside this component, or we may use it in the other portion of this component. Now let's try to display this message inside this component as a paragraph, for example. That's it. First, we get the message, then we are displaying it inside this paragraph element. Now let's see how can we use this simple component. Okay, let's use this simple component inside the web page, for example, home page. Let's go to the home page. It's so simple to use this. Let's go to the home page and then we can just use here. Before that, one thing, we have here one imports.razor file. This file is actually a reference file. For example, this project name is Blazor Top 10 Features, and then it's also using referencing Blazor Top 10 Features.layout because we have the layout folder here, and then we have also have Blazor Top 10 Features.components because we just created this one. Therefore, now inside this components folder, we have created the simple components .razor component. Therefore, we can use, because we have here, we have referenced this component, therefore we can use this component across the application. Therefore, this is very important. So save it, then go to here. Now, okay, I just put one line here, then use our simple component. We can use it very simply. Okay, that's it, like this. And then I just mentioned that we have a parameter here, message parameter. This will be show up as a property of the component when we use it. Okay, that's it here. Therefore, if I do the space here, and I can see that message as a property, just like this message. Therefore, I can pass any message here, and then this message will be show up as a paragraph in the home page. Let's do this. Now, this message will be show up as a paragraph in the home page. Now, let's run and see the result. Save this. Here we go. We just put a line here in order to differentiate, because this is a simple component, and then welcome to our simple component. Then this is a simple component we just created. This is the title of the component, and this is the message we just passed to this component when we use it. Namely, this message is passed from the home page, and this message therefore display it inside this component. From here, this two line, all of this area is belong to this component. Please remember to keep components small and focused on a single task to maximize reusability and maintainability. Using child components to break down complex UIs can make your code base more organized and easy to manage. Next, let's talk about Razor syntax. Razor allows us to mix C# and HTML seamlessly, making our web applications dynamic and interactive. It's designed to make the coding simpler and more efficient. Here's an example. In the previous section, we have declared this public parameter, and now we are displaying it here. But this time, let's initiate one private parameter. For example, private string title. Then assign it. We can display this title just like this message by adding an @ mark just in front of this title, just like this, namely. Okay, we just seen it here, and this time we just seen this private. Previously the message is public, and we just annotate it with parameter because this message is coming from the outside of this component, but this message is private and is just assign it here. The same thing, instead of this public or private, we can use it just like this. This variable is custom variable, we just declare it. Actually, in the Razor syntax, we can directly use C# objects by adding @ mark in front of it. That's very powerful. Now let's see it. For example, datetime is a C# object. By adding @ mark in front of it, we can use it here inside this HTML, just HTML portion of the component. Meaning, and the Razor syntax allows us to mix C# code with HTML. For example, this is the HTML and this is the directly C# code actually. By adding we can mix C# and HTML seamlessly. In addition, leverage conditional statements and loops within the Razor templates to handle more complex logic directly in your markup. save this, and let's run the application. See the date time now, because we are just using directly this date time C# objects. It should show date time, always show date time. For example, yeah, current date and the time, it's just displayed. Therefore, using code blocks, we can encapsulate our C# code within Blazor files. First, I need to clear this, and okay, let's clear this as well until here. Okay, now let's show the example code here for data binding. First, a simple one-way data binding. Later, we will show two-way data binding and event callbacks. In case it's null, we have this variable inside the C# code portion, and in the HTML portion we have this input element, and its type is text. When we input some text by using this @bind, this text, input text, will be assigned to this variable. This is the one-way data binding. Now let's display that. That's it. First save this. Now we have completed this simple code. Now let's run the application and see the result, namely the data binding result. Okay, it's launching. From this line below, that's our simple component. Then inside the component we just declared one input element, and then we just declared your name is. Here we are going to display that name. If I enter Alex, and Alex is here. If I enter John Doe and press enter, the John Doe will be displayed here. Because first we have one input element here. Its type is text, and then we bind it with the name. Actually, this name is a variable here inside the C# code portion. Therefore, when we enter some text, and the text first go to here, and then the text should be displayed here by using this @mark. @bind. This is the data binding, one-way data binding. We just presented two-way data binding. The data first one thing, the first is by using this @bind, we are getting data from the input to this name variable. This is the one-way data binding. Namely, the data, we bind the data from the input to the component. Then, after we get that, using this syntax, we are displaying data in the UI. This is the second way. Therefore, we call this process two-way data binding. Namely, the first way is from input to the variable, second is from variable to the UI again. With two-way data binding, using this @bind, any changes in the input field are automatically reflected in the property and vice versa. For example, in addition, consider using event callbacks for more complex scenarios where you need to react to user interactions. Now, let's show an additional example with an event callback. Okay, I have here this input, for example. Then let's add one button element here. Then we know that button has on-click event. Therefore, we can declare one event here. On click, and then when we click this button, one method inside this C# code portion can be called. Therefore, let's name it show input name. Now let's implement this method. Copy this go to C# code portion, paste it here, then let's declare one variable here. That's it. Therefore, this is the event callback method. When we click the button, this method will be called. Therefore, now inside this message, we have hello, for example, John Doe. Just I delete this one. Let me display here the message, this message. That's it. Now we are going to input one name. That name will be go to this name by using this at bind. Then when we click this button, and this method will be called, and actually this method will be assigned hello name, this text to this message, and then this message will be displayed inside this paragraph in the UI. That is the whole process. Because I changed the C# code portion, in case I just stop the application and save it, run it again. Hopefully it will be display one input element and one button in the UI. Here we go. This is the input element. This is the show name button. Therefore, when we click show name, this will be displayed around here. Let's do that. Okay. Hello, John Doe. Until here, we have shown three things. One is one-way data binding, and the second is two-way data binding, namely one-way and two-way data binding. And in the third one is we just show the event callback. Okay. This is about this data binding. Now, in the next step, we are going to present dependency injection in the Blazor. Dependency injection, or DI, is a technique that makes our code more modular and testable by injecting dependencies into our components. It promotes loose coupling and enhanced testability. Let's see how to inject a service. This is a Blazor WebAssembly project. Sometimes we need to inject services especially. Therefore, we will show a dependency injection example in this project. First, let us create one service folder. Let's create a very simple service. Actually, service is a class. Okay, this is our data. Get data, hello from my service. We have this is the service class, and inside this service class we have a method. It will return a string. This is a very simple service. Okay, let's save it. Now we are going to use this service across the application. As a time, we need to inject this service in this application, in this project, for example. All service injection is going to occur inside the program file. We have here program files. Let's see this in detail. We have here, we are declaring build. Actually, this is the container. Now, let's add our service first. We just created one service. My service, just copy it. Okay. Then we have builder. Let's add it singleton. My service. That's it. inject my service, build the services, add singleton. Now we can use this service across the application because we just injected in the program files. Therefore, let's go to our simple component. We just inject it here by using the add inject directive. Actually, that's it. But we have one thing here because this type or namespace my service could not be found. Are you missing a user directive or an assembly reference? Therefore, we need a reference here. We know that a reference is actually inside this imports. Therefore, we just reference it here. Until now, we have referenced our layout and the components folder, and then we also should be referenced. We newly added the service folder. Therefore, just like this. That's it. Save this. Now it's initiated. Inject my service. This is my service. I can use this inside this code portion, or I can use it directly here, directly inside this HTML portion. For example, I just add here one paragraph element, and then because this is now we have injected it, we know that when we use this kind of objects inside the HTML portion or inside the Blazor files, we just add one @ mark in front of this. Therefore, add my service. Then inside the service, we have a get data method. Get data method, this one. That's it. Now the data should be displayed here. Okay, let's run the application and see the result. Hopefully, hello from my service will be displayed in the UI. Okay, hello from my service. It's here. It's displayed. By registering service here, we registered the service here. Registering services in program.cs and injecting them into components here. Injecting its components. First, we register it. We have this kind of service. We are going to use this service across the application. This means that. Then, inside the specific component or specific page, we just inject it because we are going to use it. So, first, save it. By registering services in the program.cs and injecting them into components using @inject directive, we can easily manage dependencies and improve code maintainability. Dependency injection allows you to change implementations without modifying the components that use them. It's very easy and it's very convenient. In summary, first, I just create one service, a service class. Then I registered or injected it inside the program.cs. This means that we can use anywhere across this application. The services has different service lifetimes, meaning sometimes we inject services, add scoped. Sometimes we add services, add singleton. And sometimes we also add services by using transit. Namely, we add this service HTTP. This service has been added. This is default inside this project. This service has been added as scoped. And we just added our service, my service, add singleton. Namely, add singleton, as scoped, add transit. Let's say that if we have a database, for example, when we connect to the database, first we need to create SQL connection. For example, in the case of SQL Server database, when we inject the SQL connection as a service at a time, once we register it inside the program.cs, then use it inside the application without create an instance of the SQL connection because we have registered it inside the program.cs. At that time, we can register that SQL connection as a transient. For example, build the services at transient, and this is the IDB connection, this is database connection, and this is the SQL connection. For example, first we should have default connection, then the default connection, for example, app settings file, and inside that we have a default connection, and then default connection can be get by using that get connection string method. Then after we get that connection, we can create SQL connection object, and then this SQL connection object has been added as a service by using the add transient lifetime method, this method. Therefore, we have just three types of add service methods. The first one is add scoped, and the second one is, for example, add singleton. The third one is add transient. What is the difference? Namely, we have three: add singleton, across application we can use it; scoped, a new instance per request, new instance per request; and the transient is a new instance every time the service is requested. Therefore, in summary, we have three kind of life cycle here. The first one is singleton. Okay, let me just put it here. Put it here. Okay, let's say we have three kind of service life cycles. The first one is singleton. The second one is, okay, in the case of singleton, a single instance shared across application, just like my service. Then add scoped, just like HTTP client, a new instance per request. Then the third one is a new instance every time the service is requested. Therefore, we have three kinds of adding services or registering service in the program.cs based on the needs. Actually, in this application, we are not using this, therefore I just remove it. Okay, then save it. Use scoped, transient, and the singleton lifetimes appropriately to manage the lifespan of your services effectively. Register service is very powerful and very flexible. Blazor allows us to call JavaScript functions from C# and vice versa, enabling the use of existing JavaScript libraries and functionality. This means you can integrate Blazor with any JavaScript library you are already using. Let's see an example. First, clear this, and also let me clear all of this. In order to use JavaScript, we can inject it IJS runtime. IJS runtime, this one. JS. Okay, now we can use JavaScript inside this component because we just injected IJS runtime as JS. Okay, first let's create one elect function. We have an index page. This is the HTML page inside this application. Therefore, we can add some JavaScript function inside this page. Of course, we can add JavaScript function here by using script element. But this time, I am going to add it here because this is the top place inside this application. Therefore, first, let's add a simple elect function here. That's it. We pass a message, and this message will be shown inside this elet. We know that this elet a function inside the JavaScript. Save this. Now we have simple component. Therefore, we just injected IJS runtime. Now I can use that JavaScript function inside this component. Let's create a button here. Now let's create the show alert method here. We just passed it, and then we also passed a message here. Save this. Let's run this application. Hopefully there will be a button, and that button name is show alert. When I click it, hello from Blazor, this message will be shown inside the pop-up. Let's do it. Okay, now we have show alert button. When I click this button, hello from Blazor will be show up inside the pop-up. Okay, here we go. Hello from Blazor, meaning using IJS runtime, we can call JavaScript functions from our Blazor components. This interoperability expands the possibility of what we can achieve with Blazor, allowing for more complex and interactive web applications. JavaScript interoperability is also useful for integrating third-party libraries and handling tasks that are more suited for JavaScript. Okay, in the following section, let's show an additional example with a third-party library, namely how we can use third-party JavaScript library inside the Blazor applications. Let's say we have a JavaScript library. We can reference it inside the index.html file. Now, we just simulate a JavaScript library. Namely, we just create a folder here. Let's say JS folder. Inside the JS folder, let's create one simple JavaScript library. Let's name it my JS functions. Let's create a function, just get current time. Save this. We just created a folder JS. Then inside this JS folder, we have created my JS functions file. Please assume that this is corresponding to our third-party JavaScript library. The second step is let's reference this JavaScript library in the index.html file. Previously, I just showed that this is one function at the time. This time, I am going to reference a library. Therefore, I just delete this one. We are going to reference our my JS functions library, for example. Here just JS, then my functions. That's it. Save this. Now we are able to use this my JS functions library across the application. Save this. Now we are going to call that get current date function. Okay, now let me clear this first in order to keep this simple and just focus on this the latest my JavaScript functions. Okay, let me clear this. We just clear this. Now let's add one button. When we click that button, we are going to show current time. Therefore, okay, now let's implement this inside the C# code portion. Let's create one parameter here. Okay, let's get the time here. Current time, because we have JS. By using this JS, because we have IJS runtime, invoke this function inside our library, because we already registered this library in the index file. We have registered it here, so we can use it. Its functions across the application. Okay, now this variable is getting the current time, therefore we need to display it in the UI at current time. That's it. Save this. Now if I run this application, the current time will be displayed in the UI. Here we go. Now we have the show current time button. Let's click this button and the current time will be displayed here, hopefully. Okay, this is the current time. Ensure that JavaScript functions are defined before calling them, and handle asynchronous operations correctly by using async and await, because we are dealing with JavaScript libraries, so it's better to use async and task, async and await, because it's going to call, it's going to invoke JavaScript after it's available, and then it will be displayed. Therefore we need to use, in most cases we need to use async and await here. In summary, in Blazor applications we can use JavaScript functions, and also we can use existing JavaScript libraries. Please remember that when we use JavaScript functions or JavaScript libraries inside the Blazor applications, first we need to inject IJS runtime. Now let's see state management in Blazor. Managing state effectively is crucial in any application. Blazor provides several ways to handle state, ensuring a consistent user experience. One of the methods is using cascading values. Let's look at an example. Actually, the cascading values is most of the time we'll be using when we pass on data from parent component to child component. Therefore, first I will create two components. One is parent component, second one is child component. Let's assume that this simple component as a parent component. Therefore, first let's clear this, then also clear this in order to keep this process simple. Then we need to create a child component. First, let's create a child component here. Child component dot razor. Let's add one annotation here, namely cascading parameter. It's cascading parameter, meaning this parameter will be comes from the parent. Then after we get this parameter, we are going to display it here. That's it. This child component will be called inside the other component or inside the parent component. Then we are going to pass a value, namely cascade value. We are going to pass it. Then this value, the passed value, will be displayed inside this paragraph element. Save this. Now our child component has been completed. Now go to the parent component. Now we are going to pass some data to that child component. In order to do that, because let's see here again, we have here one annotation, cascading parameter, inside the child component C# code portion. Therefore, we are going to pass some value for this cascading value, this property of this page. Okay, this is the parent component, namely our simple component. Therefore, we are going to pass some value from parent component to the child component. Therefore, inside the C# code portion, let's declare one parameter. Now, we are going to pass this data, namely this text, to the child component. Okay, let's do that. In order to do this, we can use cascading value. This is a component in the Blazor, therefore we can use it. Actually, the cascading component has a value property here, therefore we just pass it here. Like this. Then now inside the cascading component, we just call it here the child component. Okay, child component. That's it. Because we call it the child component inside the cascading value component, therefore automatically this child component will receive this parent value. If I run this application, I will see data from parent inside the home page. Okay, let's do this. Here we go. This is the child component, and inside the child component we are displaying data from parent, this message, because we just passed this value by using the cascading value. We can easily pass data from parent to child components, ensuring our application state is consistent and easy to manage. This is particularly useful for passing down common data like CMS or localization settings, etc. Another way is consider using state containers for global state management. State containers are singleton services that hold a shared state across the application. Now, let's see an additional example with a state container. Here, let's create a module folder. Stop this. Let's add app state class. Let's add a class here. Let's add a property here. Save this. Now we have a class. Its name is app state. Inside that class, we have a property username. Now we are going to share this username across the application as an example of the state management. In order to achieve that, just like the previous section, is register the services inside the program files, then use the services across the applications. We can add this as a service, for example, add a singleton service. Then we can use this across the application. Let's go to program.cs file. Okay, now let's register it as a singleton. We just registered this app state as a service, as a singleton service. Therefore, we can use this across the application. For example, we have a username, and we are going to share that username across this application. In other words, store application-wide state in singleton service for global accessibility. Now let's see form handling and validation. Creating and validating forms is a common task in web development. Blazor makes this easy and efficient with built-in components for form handling and validation. Let's see how to handle form validation in Blazor. First, I just stop this application. Then, in order to keep this process simple, I clear all of this. Okay? Then save this. First, let's create a person model. Inside this model, then it should have some property. For example, let's add one property. Name, person name. We are going to introduce validation. Therefore, we just add one annotation here. This name is required. save this. Now we have person object. Person object include one name property. It is required. Okay, save this. We are going to create a form. When we input a person's name, that name will be validated. If the name field is filled out with appropriate name, we can submit the form. If not, we are going to show a validation message there. Okay, let's do that. First, inside the C# code portion, let's declare a person object. Now here we can create one form. Actually, in Blazor we have edit form. Later we will create it. Inside this validation, we need to validate data. Therefore, if the data is not valid, at that time we are going to display validation summary. Therefore, we need validation summary here. Now, let's declare one input text here. When we bind the data, we pass the input text to the person's name. Therefore, we just using bind value here. Here we need to add validation message here. That's it. Let's declare the button, namely submit button. Okay. Now our button is okay. When we click this button, submit button, it will automatically call this on valid submit. Here, this method will be called. Namely, handle valid submit method will be called. This method should be inside the C# code portion. Now we are going to create this method. Okay. First, we assign it empty string. Okay. Now, at first this is empty. Then, only this form is valid. At that time, the input name will be assigned to this variable. Okay. Therefore, here, if this is not null or empty, only at that time we just show some message here. This message will be shown, namely this message will be displayed only when this form is valid. Okay, now let's see that. Now this is form. We have input text and then we have a submit button. Now the text box is empty. If I click this, hopefully validation message will be show up here. Okay, the name field is required. Therefore, now this form is invalid because this form is empty. Now, if I click this, the input name has been saved. Let's do that. Okay, input name has been saved, colon, then John Doe. Meaning, now this form is valid. Therefore, we can save it. In summary, we have showed form handling and validation. In the Blazor applications, form validation is very easy and it's easy to show validation messages. Therefore, Blazor's edit form and validation components simplify the creation of robust forms with built-in validation, ensuring a seamless user experience. You can leverage data orientations for simple validation and implement custom validation logic as needed. Blazor also supports custom validation attributes and logic, giving you more control over form validation. Now, let's show an additional example with custom validation. In order to show custom validation, we need to create one custom validation attributes. Let's create it inside this module folder. Custom validation attribute. Okay, now we have created custom validation attribute class. This class should be inherited from validation attribute. Validation attribute, this one. Okay, now let's implement, or let's override validation result. We are implementing protected override validation result. We are passing two arguments here. The one is value going to be validated. The other one is validation context. Okay, then here actually this is validation attribute. Okay, now save this. Okay, now we have created custom validation attribute inherited from validation attribute. Namely, the object value is valid at set time. We just return some success value. If this is not valid at set time, we are going to return some message, namely error message. Therefore, we just check it here. If value is string and that value is start with A at set time, we return validation result success. Namely, the form should be valid. Then, if the input text not started with A or it's not A at set time, we are going to display this value must be start with E. Okay, now let's save this. Let's implement this. Okay, just copy here in front of the attribute. We can copy all, but most of the time we just use the class name portion just prior to the attribute. Okay, therefore I just copy it, custom validation. Then go to this person. Until now we are using required. Just delete this. Instead of required, just use the custom validation. Now save this. If I save and then if I run this application, then in the input, if we enter John Doe at set time, an error message will be displayed. Because in the custom validation, we just said that only name start with A or A are valid. Otherwise, we are going to display validation error message. Now let's see that. Okay, now we have the input and we have submit button. If I enter John Doe, it should be invalid. Therefore, invalid message, namely validation message, will be show up somewhere. Okay, John Doe. Okay, the value must be start with A. This is good. If I enter A or a text or string start with A at set time, this value should be valid. For example, the Alex A. Now I just enter Alex, or if I enter A, this should be valid. Okay, now if I enter Alex, then click the submit. At that time, the input value has been saved. Colon, then display Alex. Okay, the input name has been saved. Colon Alex. Okay, it's good. Amanda, for example, this name started with A. Therefore, this should be valid value. Therefore, when I click submit, there should be Amanda. Okay, it's working. Therefore, Blazor also supports custom validation attributes, and the logic give us more control our form validation and displaying validation messages. Now let's talk about routing. Routing allows us to navigate between components, creating a single-page application experience. This means users can navigate through your application without full-page reloads. Let's define some routes. Okay, first, I just close these pages or classes. Let's open the app Razor. Now we have open app.razor file. This is the application file. Here we can find that found context route data. Actually we have some component route view. Inside route view we have route data property. Then its layout is actually the main layout. If the route can be found, and it will be displayed the main layout, and inside the main layout we have navigation or other things. If it's not found, it just displays sorry, there is nothing at this address. This kind of message will be displayed. Actually the routing using the add page directive. Let's see that here in the page. If we go to here, add page directive, this is the home page. Come here, and this is the counter page. We have add page directive, then we just slash and the counter. Actually this add page, this is the routing information. Namely, after add page we just write the route. This is the route. It's so simple. Therefore, using add page directive we can define routes and navigate between components effortlessly. Actually the route component in app.razor handles the route matching and renders the corresponding component. Navigation Manager allows for programmatic navigations, giving you more control over route. We have here, for example, 3 pages: the counter page, home page, and weather page. Let's see weather page, page/weather, and let's see counter page, page/counter, and let's see here page/nothing. I can do here home. It's okay. The same thing. It's just slash, only slash. Therefore, this routing can be achieved by using add page directive. Additionally, use route parameter to pass data through URLs and handle not found routes to improve user experience. For example, we can pass some parameter via routing. First, stop this application. Let us create one page here or one component here. For example, fetch data. Let me add fetch data. Add this. Then let's add a page directive. Add page directive. Then let's us add some route. Fetch data. Then as a route parameter, count. The type is int. This is the route fetch data, and this is the route parameter, and this is the route parameter type int. Okay, this is so simple. Then inside this component I am going to display this count colon, then add, let's say it's count. I will declare this variable inside the C# code portion now. Okay, first, because we have route here, this is our route, and then this is our route parameter. This parameter comes from the URL with URL. Therefore, first here parameter, then okay, that's it. Now I have fetch router, then I have the parameter with int, then this parameter will become here, and then this parameter will be displayed inside this paragraph element count, and this count. This is it. Now I have complete fetch data component. Just save this. Now let's call this. Namely, let's call this route. Okay, Let's run this application. This is the home page. Now let's go to the newly created route. Fetch data, then add 10 here as a parameter. Namely, we need to slash here, add 10. Namely, localhost 5096/fetch data, because we just added this fetch data route. Then this is the parameter. I just entered 10. Now it should be displayed fetch data page and the count is 10. If I enter 100, and this should be 100 here. Now we are in the home page. We have here a line. Just below the line, I am going to implement performance optimization. Actually, optimizing performance is key to a smooth user experience, especially in large applications. Blazor provides several tools to achieve this. One powerful feature is virtualization for large lists. Let's see it in action. First, let's add C# code portion here. Code. Then here we need to add one list. In order to display, we need to create one very large list here. Okay. Private list. Okay. We have created our list item. This list includes 10,000 items. Now let's display it here by using the virtualize component of the Blazor, because it's very efficient. Therefore, it has items property. We just give this the items property. Then it has context property. We just give only one item here. Okay, then close this. Inside the virtualized component, we just assigned our list to items, its items property, and then a single item assigned to the context. Okay, now we are going to display it inside this virtualized component. Therefore, I may use some div element, for example, div, then I just use add item because its context is item. Now we have completed this optimization by using the virtualized component. Okay, let's see this. Run this, hopefully expecting that displayed vertically. Okay, now let's run it. Okay, therefore item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, it's just displaying. Okay, now we can display it. When I scroll down, it displays. You see here. Yeah. Only the visual portion just being displayed, not all data once. Therefore, we are calling it virtualize. Only visual portion is displaying currently. Therefore, this is very convenient and optimized displaying technique. Therefore, virtualization helps render large lists efficiently by only loading visible items, significantly improving performance and responsiveness. This is crucial for applications that deal with very large data set. Consider using other performance optimization techniques such as lazy loading ahead of time completion and efficient state management. In the following section, we will show an additional example, lazy loading. For this, I need to create one lazy loading component or page. Okay, let me start this application. Let's add a lazy page here. Okay, add. Let's add some C# code. Now we have completed our C# code portion. Now let's implement this inside the HTML code portion. Okay, because we have here is data loaded, this parameter or variable. This is Boolean variable. Once the data is loaded, namely after 2 seconds, this will be get true value. Therefore, let's put here lazy loading example, for example. Okay, we just created a component. Its name is lazy.razor, and we just put a title, lazy loading example. Lazy loading example, misspelling, lazy loading example. Then we just created a Boolean variable, is data loaded. At first we assign it to false, then we just override the protected on initialized async, and after 2 seconds we just simulated data loading. The is data loaded is true. Then based on this value, if this is true, we just display data has been loaded. If this is false, data loading data. Save this. We can call it inside the home page, for example. Therefore, inside the home page, I can remove this one. I don't use it. Okay, therefore, inside this home page, I can call that lazy component here. Lazy component. That's it. Okay, let's run this application. After 2 seconds. Okay. Now this application is running. If I go to home page, at first it says data loading ... After 2 seconds, data has been loaded. Will be displayed. Okay. Okay, data loading data. Then data has been loaded. Let's try again. Okay, loading data. Then data has been displayed after 2 seconds. This is lazy loading. This is one of the important property of the Blazor as well. So therefore, consider using other performance optimization techniques such as lazy loading, ahead of time completion, and efficient state management. Async and await. This is actually the lazy loading, and we just implement it here. It works great. In addition, use the on after render async lifecycle method to defer non-critical work and enable ahead of time completion for performance gains. Sometimes we just need to load the data when we need it. Therefore, use the on after render async lifecycle method. We can implement lazy loading related functionality. Finally, let's introduce security best practices. Security is essential in web applications to protect user data and prevent vulnerabilities. Blazor provides robust security features to help you achieve this. Using ASP.NET Core Identity, we can implement authentication and authorization easily, ensuring our application is secure and the user roles are managed effectively. Role-based authorization restricts access to certain parts of your application based on user roles. Namely, some user access more data, some user access less data, and admin access all of data, for example. This is role-based authorization. Therefore, role-based authorization restricts access to certain parts of your application based on user role. Then, we should always use HTTPS to protect data transmissions and store tokens securely to prevent unauthorized access. In this tutorial, we didn't give security-related example because we are going to keep this tutorial simple. If you need security-related practices, in this channel, we have other tutorials. Please look for our channel. We have security-related videos or we have security-related tutorial in this channel. In summary, we have covered the top 10 Blazor feature every developer should know. Component-based architecture, Razor syntax, data binding, dependency injection, JavaScript interoperability, state management, form handling and validation, routing, performance optimization, and security best practices. These features will help you build powerful, efficient, and secure web applications. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Happy coding. Thank you for watching.